What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. My name is Vadim and I've been building mobile applications using React Native and Expo for the past 5 years. And today I'm gonna try to help you understand what's new in Expo SDK 50 and Expo Router V3 and how these new features can help you build better mobile applications. The plan for today is the following. We're going to start by going through the announcements of Expo SDK 50 and Expo Router V3, and I'm going to share with you my opinion, some of the context, and my ideas on how these changes will help you or what it means for you as a mobile developer. Then I don't want to stop here. I really want to get our hands dirty and take these new changes to a test drive, try to build some features, mess around with them, see them in practice, because I think that's the best way to see new changes and to actually understand what's different. Because if you don't use some of the things day by day, most of the terms or most of the things in a update notes will not make a lot of sense for you. So that's why in this video I'm gonna try to give a very practical changes and updates and what that means for you as a React Native and Expo developer. In the test drive, I'm gonna focus a lot on the Expo Router V3 and the API routes that now allows us to build universal full stack React applications using Expo. I'm going to show you how that is happening and how you can use that in your applications. I will also want to give a try to the new dev tools that were introduced in Expo SDK 50. We're going to try to initialize, and also we're going to upgrade an existing project to the Expo SDK 50. I'm going to try to mess around with the new SQLite driver from Expo that is crucial to power offline first applications. And also there are some exciting updates on the EAS update that we can have a look into today. So if you're ready, let's get started. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the chat as we go through the announcement. Let's roll the intro and let's start the video. Yes, hello everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? Everything okay? Are you excited about this? Have you already tried Expo SDK 50, or have you tried to upgrade your existing projects to Expo SDK 50? That's the question. Let me know in the chat. And actually, I already in November, in the project that I was doing in November, I needed some things from React Native 0.73. So I tried already Expo SDK 50 while it was in beta, and also the API routes as well. But today we're gonna do a more deep dive and go line by line to understand the announcements. Let's start with actually Expo SDK 50. Because the SDK is the core of Expo. So let's see what new things and what changes do we have here. First of all, we see that Expo SDK 50 comes with the latest version of React Native at the moment of this video, which is React Native 0.73. And actually React Native 0.73 includes a lot of nice updates that you can check out separately on the React Native 0.73 changelog. For example, I needed some features from 0.73 in order to specifically the transform origin that helped me rotate some of the views, not based on the center, but based on the other origin. A little bit off topic, but yeah, let's continue. Going forward, we see that the first chapter is the introducing of Expo DevTool plugins. This was a huge topic. Previous year, there was a lot of development and innovation around improving the debugging experience of React Native applications, of Expo applications as well, because a lot of people had these issues and had these problems of poor experience while debugging applications. We saw a lot of updates and improvements previous year, and we see that this SDK version also focused a lot on improving the debugging experience, and it actually introduced a new thing, the Expo DevTool plugins. At the core, Expo DevTool plugins is an API that will allow library developers to create browser-based tools that will help you debug your applications. For example, here we see a quick example of debugging the, let's say, Apollo client or some other tools. So you use Apollo client in your application, and you want to debug and to understand what's the cache, like what data do you already have in the cache. Without a tool, like it's very hard to understand what's going behind the scenes of Apollo client, but with a existing Apollo client DevTool plugin, we can open up a browser window, and from here we can go and check like different data that we have here, as you can see right in this GIF. This is really powerful, and Expo actually provided a couple of plugins for popular tools like Apollo, Tanstack Query, Tinybase for the React Native Async storage, and for React Navigation. For React Navigation, the benefit of using the Expo DevTool plugin is that we can see the state, we can see, basically debug the state of our React Navigation. And because Expo Router is built on top of React Navigation, the DevTool plugin for React Navigation will be compatible with Expo Router applications as well. Really cool, and I would really like to give it a try and see it in action today once we finish with going through this documentation. I think on this topic as well, on the debugging, I'm gonna scroll down until we find the first class support for Sentry. Where is it? Here. The Expo SDK 50, the Expo team focused a lot on improving the compatibility of Expo and Sentry. And first of all, what's Sentry? Sentry is a crash reporting tool. I'm using it in my financial application Famify, and it allows us to have better visibility in the errors, crashes, issues, and any performance issues for our production application. Because in a lot of cases, you test your application locally, everything is working, you deploy it to production, and a couple of users have crashes, they tell you about them, you cannot reproduce, and you're in a situation where you don't know like how to fix a bug that you don't understand. With Sentry, if you have it, the errors, the crashes will be reported to Sentry, and you're gonna be able to look there and see what's going on. Maybe I can show you the actual dashboard that I have in Sentry. Hopefully I can sign in quickly and you're gonna understand better. And yeah, here is the dashboard, my Sentry dashboard for Famify. And for example, we see that there is an error that specifies a type error, cannot read property date of undefined. It doesn't happen locally, but for some user that happens. And we have a lot of details about this issue here, like the device, the version, and also what's important is the stack trace, meaning that it gives us an idea of where this application in the code happened. The problem was because this Sentry that we see here was integrated in an application that was using Expo SDK 49, so it was working before, but the problem was with these stack traces, with seeing exactly where it happened in our code. There is no, like in my case, I didn't have any source maps, and also the problem was even worse when using EAS update. Because usually with EAS update, you do some changes, you send the changes, you do some changes on your JavaScript side, you send the changes, but Sentry doesn't know about these changes. So it cannot report correctly where this error happens in your code. In Expo SDK 50, this should be improved. I will actually, we're not gonna try it today, but I will definitely update my application with with Sentry React Native package, and I will maybe write something on Twitter, so follow me there to see how the new changes will help me improve that. The changes that happened is, first of all, the Sentry Expo package was deprecated and it was merged into Sentry React Native in order to have everything into one place, not to have Sentry Expo and Sentry React Native, to have only one package. And yeah, now it's made compatible with EAS update, so it's going to be as simple as running the update, and after that running Sentry Expo upload source map and specifying the directory of your folder. So really excited about this one, and if you're not yet using Sentry in your production application, I highly recommend that, because you will be surprised how many crashes and bugs you have in your project that are happening in production and you don't even know that they exist. So yeah, that was about the debugging. Besides that, around debugging, we are promised to have better errors better errors in Expo CLI if something goes wrong. So that was some changes around the debugging experience. Do you have any questions so far, guys? They say server routes are experimental. Is that true? Yes, if they say it, that's true. It's still like a very new thing, and it's going to be experimental for a long time, because yeah, a lot of things will change. It's just the beginning of, and it's a huge update. It's something that, but we're gonna get more into that a bit later when we will talk about the Expo Router V3. Can Expo SDK 50 be used with Xcode less than 15? As far as I know, you need to upgrade to Xcode version 15 in order to use the latest version of Expo and also the latest version of React Native. Because as we can see here, where is it? We have to upgrade Xcode to 15. To compile the native iOS project. That's only if you compile it locally, because if you are using, for example, Expo Go, then you don't need to upgrade anything regarding Xcode. You don't even need Xcode when working with Expo Go. Also, if you're doing the builds with EAS, again, you don't need to do anything with Xcode. You need Xcode 15 only when building locally. That's it. Yeah, moving forward to keep the pace going, let's see what are the next changes that we are excited about. I'm gonna scroll up and we're gonna go to the next chapter. The next chapter are improvements on some of the Expo libraries. Expo doesn't only provide us the SDK, it also supports and provides us a lot of libraries and packages that make building React Native application easier. One of these package, for example, I'm gonna go to the second one first, is the Expo Camera, and this was one of their oldest and most used package. It's a great package to get started with implementing camera functionalities in your application, and they improved it and brought it back up to date with platform best practices. To be honest, I don't really know what exactly changed there. I was looking through the changelog. I saw some improvements around the scanner, maybe some improvements around the API and the platform integration. But yeah, we're gonna see like there is a new documentation for Expo Camera. If you're just getting started, check the documentation out of Expo Camera next. But even they in this in the announcement, they are recommending that for more advanced use cases, and also if you need like frame processor, you should check the React Native Vision Camera, which is another library for integrating with camera. And we also tested it during November project. You can check it out on our channel. It's a great solution that gives you way more control of how you're using the camera. Okay, besides the Expo camera, another library that was completely rewritten probably, is the Expo SQL Next library. This is the SQL driver that allows us to integrate with SQLite libraries that helps us store data locally on the device using and interacting with that data with an SQL syntax. So this is nothing like related to remote databases or something like that. The SQLite is a local database that is written to a file with which we can interact with SQLite with SQL syntax. This change, the way it will impact us, especially applications that are focused on being local first and offline first. Applications that you want to build in order to make them accessible while there is no internet connection. Because in that situation, you need to write data somewhere. There are different solutions. SQLite is not the only solution, but this is a very basic and straightforward way of implementing a local first application. You simply use SQL statements, you write to a file to a local database, and the Expo SQLite library is the driver, is the package that helps us do this integration and connection. It was brought up to date with all the changes and all the features that we need in SQLite, like prepared statement, update callbacks, and even the ability to add blob types, like images and so on. It also is compatible with CR SQLite, and this is a way to synchronize two SQLite databases on different devices. So this can help you implement offline and online applications that will work offline, and when you get internet connection, you can synchronize that with another SQL database. With this one, I'm curious, and I'll try to get my hands dirty more in this video a bit later today, at least to write something to a database, to read something, to execute some queries, to see like this prepare statements and synchronize, maybe not synchronizing, but yeah, to see just how it works. So that was the improvements around the libraries, like most notable improvements around the libraries. Let me stop for a moment, see if there are any questions. The questions that are a bit off topic, I'm gonna try to come back to them after the first part, after going through this documentation, not to stop for a very long time. Issues for upgrading, we're also going to try to discuss them when we will try to upgrade. Today we're going to try to upgrade an older version of Expo SDK to the latest one. The next chapter in the changelog is the Expo fingerprint. When I read that, I was thinking that it gave me an impression that it's something related to the let's say Touch ID or something about the fingerprint or biometrics authentication, but it's completely not about that. It's a way or a tool that helps us generate a fingerprint or a hash for your native side project that you have built. So for example, if you install a new library, in that situation, your native side code, when you will rebuild, it will change. So the fingerprint will be changed, and I'm not exactly sure for us developers how this library will what it will do and in what situation we would use it. But I believe this is going to be crucial for Expo updates, because Expo updates depends a lot on knowing what what is the version of a native side project. Because let's say you are building a feature, you are sending over the air updates, everything is working fine, but then you are installing a new library and you are trying you're installing a new library that will change the native side code, a new library with native side dependencies. And if you're gonna try to send over the air those updates to applications that are using the old native side build, in that case, the application for those user will crash. So at the moment, the way Expo Updates is working is based on versions that either we have to manually keep up to date or let Expo Updates manage it for us. And I believe that going forward, the Expo fingerprint library is going to be used in Expo Updates to know what is the version, like what is the state of a native side application, and is it safe to deliver over-the-air update? Will the over-the-air update work with the current state of that application? That's how I understand it. All right, going next. I think the next one is the huge one. Yes, it's Expo Router V3, but I'm gonna leave it for a moment because we're gonna come back here. I want to discuss the Expo Router announcement as well to see what's going on there. All right, so with Expo SDK, the biggest changes and the biggest updates we have covered. Yeah, before we go to the other like EAS and so on, let me scroll down a bit until we go to Expo Go. I want Expo Go. Where is Expo Go? Here. I'll talk now about a little bit about Expo Go because it kind of goes hand in hand with the Expo SDK. Expo Go, first of all, for everyone that is new here, maybe you're using it, but I will give a couple of details of what Expo Go is and how it fits into the whole stack of building Expo applications for us to understand better some of the changes that will happen to Expo Go into the future. So first of all, I'm gonna say that Expo Go from this version is dropping support for SDK 47 and 49, which means that the new version of Expo Go will be able to run applications that are using Expo SDK 49 and Expo SDK 50. This is something common, like during every update, Expo is dropping some of the oldest SDK from Expo Go to focus on the latest one. Nowadays, it's much easier to upgrade an Expo application, so that shouldn't be a problem. Also, if you have an older project that you are supporting that is using an older version of SDK, what you can do is you can use an older version of Expo Go, install it on your Android simulator, iOS emulator, and test it that way. On a physical device, I'm not sure how that would happen because on a physical device, we are downloading the Expo Go from the App Store and Play Store, and I'm not sure if we can downgrade them. Though I'm pretty sure we can manually install like a binary of Expo Go from an older version. But yeah, with emulators, we simply install an older version and we keep working that way. Or if there is no Expo Go on the device, when running npx expo run iOS, Expo CLI will try to install the necessary Expo Go application there. So it will take care in a way of itself. It's just good for us to understand like how everything works. Now, this is going to be a big one, and probably this is the first step into some changes of how we are building Expo applications. First of all, let's put it this way. As I said, the new version of Expo Go will support two SDK versions, SDK 49 and 50. Expo has a patent for this because, yeah, like it's actually quite complicated to run different native libraries into the same native environment. And that means that an Expo Go application can run both applications with SDK 49 and SDK 50. However, this, as Expo team is saying, has been one of the hardest parts to change and to maintain whenever they are doing an SDK upgrade. So it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort and resources to support multiple SDK versions in Expo Go. So the change going forward, they decided to move to supporting only one SDK version for each release, starting with SDK 51. That means that in SDK 51, when the upgrade will happen, the Expo Go will only be able to run applications that are using SDK 51. Then when 52 comes, we're going to only be able to run applications with version 52. Again, this might be a challenge, specifically like if you are in this period of upgrading. But again, like upgrades are not that complicated nowadays, and also we can install like older version of Expo Go. That's also a solution. The alternative, or let's say why this is important, I think with this change, what I believe will happen in the future is the shift from using mainly Expo Go to build mobile applications, to build Expo application, to creating and managing development builds for your application. In the past, or let's say Expo Go, like what is Expo Go in general? Expo Go, I like to compare it with with being a browser that runs a website. If you are a web developer, that will make sense. So for example, a web developer doesn't have to think about building a browser that will run his website. He just focuses on building the website, and he's using Google Chrome to run to open the website. That's what Expo Go is for us. We are focused on writing the JavaScript side code, and we are using an existing native application, like an existing browser with all the native features and packages and libraries behind the scenes, to execute our JavaScript side. With the introduction of Expo Modules, nowadays we are able, and this is a good thing, because now we are able to go beyond what's available in Expo Go. For example, if you need to install a library that has native packages, native libraries, native code, let's say Firebase or some other library, in that case, Expo Go will not contain the native code necessary to run your application. In the past, that was a bit of a problem. Nowadays, that's not a problem anymore, because when that happens, we simply create a development build. A development build, we should think about it as our custom browser, our custom version of Expo Go that contains only the native code that our application needs. It will contain things that we write from our native modules and also from libraries that we are installing. So development builds are going forward probably is going to be more crucial, and I highly recommend you to get used to them, understand how they work, understand the whole CNG process, which is the continuous native generation. This is a big thing. So you're gonna hear a lot more about CNG, continuous native generation, in the future. I don't think Expo Go in general is going anywhere, like it's not gonna be removed or dropped, because it's still like a very important and crucial part to get started really quick. Because if you're a beginner, or if you have a small project, if you have a proof of concept, you don't want to wait for native builds to happen. You just want to write your code and open it up in Expo Go. And I think this is like very, very useful, and I really hope it will continue to be like this in future. But for more complex projects or for more configuration options, we have development builds, which are not that hard to create. You can create a development build both locally and also in the cloud using EAS if you don't have Xcode or Android Studio. That's not a problem, like everything is there. So that was the Expo Go updates and some changes that will happen in the future. Now I'm gonna scroll up again to see the next chapter, which is going to be around EAS. Oh, a lot of updates. Yes, here. As I said, Expo Router, we're gonna come back to it in a moment, but let's first talk about the EAS build. EAS in general is the suite of tools, of cloud tools, that helps us, EAS Build helps us build our applications in the cloud, both for iOS and Android. EAS Submit helps us deliver our applications to the stores, App Store or Play Store. EAS Update helps us remotely update over the air our application without having to rebuild. For example, if you do a bug in your JavaScript side or in your code, you fix it, and using EAS Update, you can send that change to your users instantly without having to build and submit a new build to App Store verification. It's a great tool, and it powers like the fast loops of delivering features for your applications. And let's see what changes do we have to the EAS suite. Starting with EAS Build, I don't think there are any like major or huge updates here. We have some dependencies that are being updated inside EAS Build, such as Xcode was updated to 15.2, JDK to 17 on Ubuntu, and Node 18 is now the default because this is the requirement for the latest version of React Native, and Expo. So yeah, make sure that you also have Node 18 on your system for everything to work as it was working before. Not sure where is my keyboard, but if you simply open your terminal, you can check that by running node-v, and I have actually 20. At least 18, that's good. We should see improved warning and errors in EAS Build if something is not going properly. There is a bit of changes around improvements in CocoaPods and how it will impact us. We should see a bit faster builds without having to do any changes. Also around EAS, it's not necessarily EAS Build, but it's a separate application called Expo Orbit, and this is a macOS application. I'm not sure if it's available on Windows as well, but it's a macOS application that helps us manage, run, and install builds that are happening in EAS on local simulators. So I have it installed. I can open the Orbit from a quick menu here at the top. Where is it? Here at the top, I can press, open it up. I see different projects that I have. I see different emulators. I can launch them from here. And I also can select a build from EAS that will open right away my projects. So it's really a neat application that helps us manage EAS Build. But the cool changes and the big changes are happening around EAS Update, the service that is helping us deliver over-the-air updates. In the Expo Updates, which is a package that we are using in our application to fetch the updates that we send towards EAS Update. So don't confuse EAS Update, which is a cloud service managing and storing these updates, and Expo Updates, which is a package that we install and manage these updates inside our application. So the cool thing about Expo Updates, now it gives us a hook called Use Updates that can give us more information about the available updates or what update is currently running. So we see a lot of things that we can get from here, and an example that will make things more clear is usually these updates are happening like magic behind the scenes. So you really need to understand how they happen in order for them to make sense. Because if you don't understand, you're gonna say like, oh, it's not working, I have to open and close the application multiple times. But that's actually how it's working. Like, for example, when you send an update to the users, the next time the users open the application, he will still use the old update, and in the background, Expo Updates will download the new one. So that's why the first time you open the application, you're gonna still see the old updates. When you close the application and open it again, only then the downloaded update will take effect. So all of this magic behind the scenes, now we can get access to these things inside our application, and we can also add some logic in our application around updates. For example, we can check if there is an update, let's show a pop-up that's saying like, hey, wait a bit, or like, let's show a progress bar and ask the user if he wants to restart the application to use the latest update. That's also possible, and now it's available using the Use Updates hook. A new feature of EAS Update are the rollbacks. With rollbacks, if for example we sent an over-the-air update that later broke something or introduced a bug, in that situation what we can do is simply roll back or send a rollback, and this will instruct our production application to use the JavaScript code that was generated at build time. So basically we're saying like, hey, ignore all the over-the-air updates, use what you had there before, let me fix the bug and I'm gonna send another update in a moment. So this is really cool, like if you're introducing regressions, bugs in when sending over-the-air updates. The next feature, super cool, they announced it at UpJS previous year, and I was excited about this, are the rollouts. With rollouts, I think in this image, it tells us a lot. What we can do is, instead of sending an over-the-air update to all the users, risking that we are introducing a bug and all of a sudden all our users experience this bug, the application is crashing all over the place, we are losing millions of dollars. Instead of that, we can send the update to a very small percentage of our users. We can test it, monitor to see if there is no issues introduced, and only then send it to everyone. So when you hotfix something, you send it to 25%, you monitor this, you then send to 50%, you see that everything is okay, and then you go to production to everyone, and the hotfix will be delivered to all the users. Super cool for testing, for also making sure that you are basically not all of a sudden breaking the application for all the users. Really powerful for specifically for companies that are supporting huge applications. Okay, so that was the updates around EAS. The EAS submit didn't receive any updates, but it's working pretty fine. I think the EAS update is the innovation, the thing that makes using Expo really unique and a huge advantage, because I don't know, working with other tools or building even native applications, this is not possible. If you're building a native application, even a small bug fix, you have to rebuild the application, you have to submit it to App Store, wait a couple of hours or sometimes even days for them to approve. Sometimes you get rejected and you have to go again. And that means that from the moment you fix something until it's in the production, it can take days. So that slows down the speed of teams for developing applications, which is not the case when using over-the-air updates when building Expo applications. Oh, this is getting long. I thought that I'm gonna do these updates quicker. Let me know in the chat and also in the comments, what do you think about these like long deep dives in these updates? Because I didn't want to simply read this, because of course you can go ahead and read it yourself. I wanted to give you a little bit more context, more information, and to answer some of the questions. What does it mean for me as a developer? How this will help me, and what are the new possibilities that currently are possible and before they were not? That's the questions I'm trying to answer. That's why I'm trying to go more in depth. Hello, Jack. You are on time. We just go through the documentation, through the updates. We still have to actually put this in practice. Let's continue with a couple of more chapters from the Expo update, from the Expo SDK. For the modules, Expo modules now are supported on tvOS and macOS. Let me know if anyone is building applications for tvOS and maybe also for macOS. I don't have a lot of experience with that, but yeah, a lot of these tools are made possible. I think with macOS, like there should be like people building applications using Expo, and I'm pretty sure that Expo Orbit is built with Expo. Like I can bet. Anyway, moving on, we talked about Sentry, and from the other highlights, let me see if there is any notable ones. As I said, React Native 0.73. Okay. Expo font. Here is a cool thing. The Expo font, just because it's used by so many applications. Before, all the custom fonts that you were adding, you had, and when using Expo font, you had to load the fonts when at runtime. Basically, when the application opens, you are showing the splash screen with a loading indicator. You were loading the fonts from the file system, and this added like this small like wait time for the users. Now the change is that with Expo font and powering by their config plugin, we can add our custom fonts to the native binary of our application, and this means that the font will already be in the binary. When the application opens, it's already going to be there, and we can clean up a little bit of the async loading code that sometimes looks messy. Sometimes you have to mess around with splash screen just to load the font. And also it's going to speed up a little bit the open time, which is very important for mobile applications. Really nice update for Expo font. Another library where we will get rid of some asynchronous logic, specifically around things that shouldn't probably be asynchronous, is the expo-secure-store. So the get item and set item in expo-secure-store, now they have a synchronous function, and that means that it's going to be much more easier to read an item when the application loads, which usually happens in a use effect, and previously we had to wrap it around a asynchronous function just to use and await. So now it's going to just be one line, like we are going to read it synchronously, save it in a state variable, and that's it. So really nice there. Some other changes is that you can read here, but not that huge. It's not going to change a lot for us. Another command, npx expo. Previously, to run Expo on Android and iOS, we had to use run, then how is it called? Semicolon? No, not semicolons. Colons. I don't know. Android and then run iOS. Now it was introduced npx expo run space iOS. npx expo run Android. I think it looks better and it's going to be easier to kind of remember. We just don't need the double dots here. And when we simply do npx expo run, it will ask us what platform do we want to run on. Let's see. This is also around debugging. We should see improved error messages and code removal for Expo CLI. And it now provides full stack traces for component-based errors. The URL and URL search parameters standards are already built in, because previously we had to use a polyfill, and some libraries that we are using, they expect URL functionalities to be built in, because in a lot of browsers it's built in, and libraries think that the only way to use the library is in a browser. But yeah, in Hermes it was not there, so now it is automatically included, so we don't need the polyfill anymore. Not sure how many people it will affect, but if it's you, that's cool. One less library to manage and support. And there is a preview available for something new for experimental React Native JS debugger, but I don't think we're gonna have time to look into it. From the notable breaking changes, what's gonna break? Yeah, make sure to the Android SDK was upgraded to 34, so make sure to install the JDK version 17 if you are building your projects for Android locally. The Android minimum supported version for the phone that your application can run on was upgraded to Android 6, and for iOS that's 13.4. Now we need Node 18. And the next things is some some instructions on how we can upgrade our application. We're going to try to upgrade an application today, a bit later. Let me see. And that was it for the Expo SDK 50 upgrade. I wanted to do it shortly. I failed it as usual, but I hope that it helped you understand better about these upgrades. So let me take a couple of questions. The next step is going to be to look into the Expo Router V3 updates, and then we're gonna try some of these things out. Aditya is asking, is there any future plan with AWS full stack upware offline mode too? At the moment, I don't have it like in the content plan, but it's a great idea, and I think we're gonna try to build more offline first applications this year. Victor is saying, I have a little familiarity with English, but the non-native way you speak helps me a lot in understanding the subject. Thank you. I didn't know that my bad English is actually a feature. So yeah, it's not a bug, it's a feature, I guess, right? What is used in the industry? Expo or React Native CLI? Nowadays, most of applications that are new and also the old ones, they are moving to Expo, because nowadays there is literally almost zero reasons not to use Expo. Even if you're going to be working with React Native CLI, most probably you're going to use a lot of Expo libraries, and you're going to have a hard time upgrading your React Native CLI project to the newest version. With Expo, the upgrades are really easy because all of the native side code is taken care of for us. So save yourself some pain and headache and just use Expo. All right, so yeah, if you'll have any more questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Let's go ahead and move to the next part, and this is going to be the updates that are happening in Expo Router version 3. Super excited about the new things that are coming there and the direction in which Expo Router is going. Let's open it up. Where is it? Let me search Expo Router. Here, let's open the announcement blog written by Ivan, which is the main author of Expo Router. I'm not sure why. Okay. So let's go ahead. Expo Router V3 is part of the Expo SDK 50, and it comes with a lot of improvements around performance, stability, but most importantly, what's new in Expo Router V3 are the API routes. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what API routes are, how you can use them and how they can help you, and also how it will change the direction of Expo in general. So let's go again line by line through the announcement and see what should we care about. Yeah, Expo Router V3 offers a new experimental system for building server endpoints. These are the API routes. It has reduced bundle size for the web, more powerful web support, and in version 4 we should see full web support. Excited about that as well. Let's see. So from the new features is that twice as fast static website exports. So whenever we are going to export our websites for static, it's going to be twice as fast. It's going to be 30% smaller in bundle size. And is this for websites? Yes, this is for websites. And yeah, as I said, the big feature, the huge announcement is the API routes. I remember at the after party at app.js, I was talking with Ivan, and back then we only had Expo Router V1, which was announced a couple of months before, and he already had the plan of what is going to be the main focus for version 2, version 3, version 4, and version 5. And I remember he was saying about the API routes, and I was like, okay, that's a new direction. That's probably going into the direction of how Next.js grew to allow also not only like building web applications, but also server side as well. And here we see that with Expo as well. So API routes, what are they? API routes, in simple terms, allows us to write functions that will be executed on the server. Why do we need to execute code on the server? And why can't we execute all the code on the client side? Well, because client side, the code that you have in the client is delivered to the end user. The end user, if he's using it properly, nothing bad will happen. But the client side code in bad hands means that people can get access to your source code. They can see some API keys, they can see database passwords and a lot of things if you are directly using it in client-side code. On web, that's super clear, like how we can do. We can simply inspect and we see the whole code. We can look into the JavaScript bundle, and if the, let's say, connection to the database is happening from the client side, from the JavaScript here, we're going to be able to interact with that database and delete all the records. So that's why we need a server. That's why we need a server to interact and to secure, to protect data and interactions between our data by adding some authentication on top of it, some authorization to make sure that we have specific rules of who is allowed to do what. That's why we need a server. Also, we need a server to add a lot of business side code, logic, or like server side code. Let's say, I don't know, you need to implement a feed and a following system. You need a server that will process and build like your feed based on the people you follow. You cannot do that really on the client side because first of all, it's going to take a lot of time, and then like it's going to be a lot of data moving back and forth for the user. So it's going to take a huge amount of time. Think about if Facebook just queried all the posts from their database and then filter them in your application on your phone, only displaying you the posts that from people you follow. That would probably take years to do on your device, and there will be a lot of data moving back and forth. That's why we have a server that is processing this data, is preparing this data, and we simply call that server and get only the data that we need. And also we are making sure that we protect the data with authentication authorization. So if you had to implement a full stack application before, where you needed like a server and a mobile application, you would use, for example, Expo for the mobile, and on the backend you would use, let's say, a Node.js with an Express API that would implement the server-side logic. This would be two separate projects, and in some cases that's perfectly fine, especially if your server-side is huge, is large. In some scenarios, your server-side is a very thin layer. One example I can give you is the AI application that we have built during November. In that application, I had to interact with OpenAI, and for that I needed to use my private API key. One way would be to include the API key in the client-side code and interact with OpenAI from my React Native application, because I can do the same fetch request there. That would work, but the problem if I deliver this to production, and if someone gets my application and has bad intentions, they can get access to my private API key, and they can use it for to do bad stuff or to use it for their own needs, and I would incur all the costs that is happening with that API key. That's not good, and actually that's a lot of applications are doing that. They are delivering private API keys in production without knowing. That's fine until the bad moment happens. So in this simple example, I needed to simply have an API endpoint that would do the interaction between my application and OpenAI. So I could, of course, create a separate server, a separate project that would do this, host it somewhere. Like that would work, but it would take me like much more time. With API routes, actually that's what I used in that project. I simply created a file, and I can actually show it to you because it's going to make a lot more sense. I simply created an API route. AI, is it AI movies? I simply created an API route that was doing the communication with OpenAI. The API key was used only on the server side, and from my React Native application, I was calling my own backend, with which I can later authenticate users and make sure that they have an account, and maybe even they have a paid account before doing these requests. So that's a easy example where API routes makes a lot of sense. But of course, it opens up the doors for a lot more innovations. It opens us the doors to build truly full stack applications without ever leaving Expo. We can build, now we can build the mobile applications that targets iOS, Android with Expo. We can build the web application as well with Expo, if we're using Expo Router, for example. And nowadays we can also build the server-side code also using Expo. So with this change, that marks probably the move of Expo into becoming the React framework. I think they mention it somewhere here. Where is it? React. I cannot find it right now on the page, but they said that their vision is to become the universal React framework. Pay attention, it's React framework, not React Native framework, because we can build both for mobile applications, both for the web, for the server, for everything with one code base. And this is a unique value proposition that other competitors do not have, because Next.js is great for building full stack web applications. They cannot help us a lot in building native applications, while Expo is in a spot where they have a huge market share of the mobile applications, especially around React Native, with React Native. And now with the web support of that is improving, and also with API routes, is going to probably switch and take some market share from the web as well. Let's see, do you have any questions or confusion about API routes? Do I learn Express or use Expo server-side rendering? They both deserve probably to be learned, especially depends on what's your goals. Because with Express, like if you are building like a heavy API, probably I would still recommend separating it and building it with Express, especially nowadays while the API routes are still experimental. If, however, your server side is quite thin, you need like a couple of endpoints that would write something to a database or interact with external APIs. In that case, you don't need the complexity of another project, of maintaining another project. Try to use Expo API routes, and probably it's gonna do the job pretty well. Is your Academy course one-time purchase? Yes, guys, the Academy course where you can learn all of this is one-time purchase. Thank you for the question. And you can get it at academy.notjust.dev. And it teaches you both Expo and React Native fundamentals by building two huge applications, the Duolingo and Instagram. And also it teaches you backend as well. So basically it's a full stack course using AWS. We have over 550 students, maybe even 600 nowadays. A lot of lessons, more than 45 hours of content, and it actually takes you from zero to hero. So yeah, check it out if you're interested. It's a one-time payment, or you can also split it into 3 monthly payments that are more affordable if you need that. Anyway, back to the Expo router. What else do we talk about here? Yeah, like basically adding them is quite simple. We're gonna see that in a moment. I don't want to talk about that too much because I think it's gonna make more sense when we actually use them. We're gonna open them there. And it's important to understand that this is a very large feature and will remain experimental even after version 3 stable release. Besides API routes, like other changes is that now we can configure what is going to be the root directory of Expo. So if you don't like having the app as a root directory, maybe you need like routes, you can do that as well. It's configurable. There is the testing library. There are just utilities that can help us test our Expo navigation. That's pretty dope. URL support, we already talked about that. This is something that changed. The not found routes, before they were a bit differently. Now they are standardized by adding the plus not found .js route in your stack. On the web, when we have a server-side rendering for the web, the dynamic routes will work nowadays. Before, we were able to navigate only to the static routes from the server side, and the rest was handling on the client side. Now we can dynamically navigate there as well, which is a great improvement if you're using server side in your Expo application for web. Automatic font optimizations, great optimizations benefits. We're gonna get there. Improve the Tailwind and PostCSS support on the web with the Expo Metro web. We're gonna have better support for the Tailwind. Make sure to check out the breaking changes if you are upgrading older project with Expo Router V2. Make sure to check it to see if these breaking changes will affect you. Okay, so I think it's time to actually get our hands dirty. We are 1 hour in. Let's see some of these changes in action, shall we? Are office hours, Rogelio is asking, are office hours for the Academy course open to paid users? The Academy course, like, not sure if I understood correctly the question, but the Academy, if you have the Ultimate package, you will be invited to our weekly group coaching sessions that are happening on Monday. Is that answering your question, Rogelio? Will desktop applications be available on Expo? Definitely yes. I mean, I cannot talk for Expo because I'm not affiliated with them, but desktop applications, we can build them now with React Native. There is React Native for Windows and React Native for macOS. We actually tested that and had tried them out. Super dope. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be supported in future in Expo as well. And then it's truly like you'll be able to build anything with Expo. We are waiting for this moment. Let's go for getting our hands dirty. Yes, we're going to do that. API routes affects APK size. No, API routes will not affect our native builds for mobile, because API routes, they are only so with Expo, when building the mobile application, only the routes. Yeah, in another way, like in a simpler way to answer the questions, the API routes are not included on the native side. They are only executed on the server, and they are bundled together with your web side application when you are building, when you have a server output and when you're deploying your web application to a server. So on mobile, they're not included, because that's the point of server and API routes. They shouldn't be in your client side. And also on the web, like, they are not included in the client side. They are only executed on the server where you host your server side. Can you share React Native developer roadmap so we can follow and become awesome developers in 2024 and land a job? That's a great idea. We might do a video about that. But if you are interested in that, if you're interested in upgrading and improving as a React Native, as an Expo developer in 2024. I actually have a quick question and I want to ask you a favor. Let me find this in a moment. Where is it? Give me just 1 second. I actually started working on a brand new course that will focus a lot on modern development and focus a lot on Expo and React Native. So at this moment, I'm running a survey in which I'm interested in your opinions and your insights around what you are interested in learning and what, about yourself as well. So the survey will take you around 15 minutes to complete. And as a token of appreciation, as a way to say thank you to you for your help, we will also do a giveaway, and one person that submitted and helped us with answers will win $300. So if you are interested in learning all of this stuff, please help me with your opinion and fill in this short survey. I will drop that link here. Native and Expo survey. So yeah, that would mean a lot to me and will help me build the best React Native and Expo course in 2024. Okay. Let's go ahead and we're gonna get started by, let's check back in the Expo SDK. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll down. Scroll down. Okay, let's go ahead and start by seeing how we can get started and initialize a brand new project with Expo SDK 50. We're gonna jump from project to project in order to help us move along and focus on specific features. And the first step, of course, is going to be, okay, but how do I start from scratch and start using Expo SDK 50 in a brand new project? Later on, we will also discuss how we can upgrade, but that's gonna come in a moment. For that, let's open a terminal. I'm gonna go into my projects. Give me just 1 second. What's that date? 25. Expo 50. So I'm gonna go in a folder where I will keep all the projects that we're gonna work with today. And let's go ahead and get started and initialize a project using Expo SDK 50. To do that, there is a cool tool that we can run using npx. And this allows us to use it without having to pre-install anything. The only thing that we need on our system is Node.js, and using the create expo app, then specify at latest to take the latest version. Now let's go ahead and give it a name, Expo 50 test. And then let's do a -t in order to choose a template from which we will start. Again, this is Create Expo application is a tool to initialize and set up a brand new project with Expo, and by adding at latest, we're taking the latest version. We can go with a blank template, and this is going to be a very empty canvas, but I'm gonna go ahead and choose the scroll down here until I highlight the navigation, and this is going to be pre-installed with Expo Router V3. So let's choose this template. of the starter project. And yeah, again, this is going to be pre-installed with Expo Router V3, so it's going to allow us to test some of the Expo Router new features as well. When will the course expected to start? The new one, we don't have a date yet, no, but it's going to be this year. You sent the survey, already filled it. Thank you very much. Yes, we sent it to the email, so if you're on our email list, you should probably received it already. I think nowadays they focus more on the web. There are a lot of things on mobile that can be improved, such as notification, images, but they just focus on the web. I'm not sure if challenges around notifications are in the responsibility umbrella of Expo. It's the complications around like push notifications are something like a challenge of native or mobile applications. So not sure, yeah. But curious to hear your opinion. Okay, so as we can see here, our application has been initialized. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it with Visual Studio Code by using code and then the name of our project. Here is Visual Studio Code. I will update it later. And I'll go ahead and right away start our project and then look for some of the things. But let's open package.json to make sure that we are using Expo version 50. As you can see, we are using React Native 73, very nice, and the Expo Router version 3.4. Cool. Now let's go ahead and do npm run. And we saw that there is a new command. We can do npm run, which will execute the... I wanted to do start. Yeah, let's do npm run start or just npm start to start the Metro server. From here, we can press I to run it on iOS simulator. If you're on Windows, you can open it on Android, or you can go ahead and scan this QR code with Expo Go on your physical device. It's opening on iOS. Here is our iOS device. The first time it might ask you, it might suggest, yeah, that's something that I got as well. So that's really nice. Oh, come on. I just want to make it smaller. So as I was saying, the first time that we run this command, after we upgrade, we're going to see that Expo CLI detected that the Expo Go application on my iPhone is outdated and it asks me to upgrade it. So I can simply press yes, and without having to think about the Expo Go version, it automatically upgrades it to the latest version to support the Expo SDK 50. And that also happens like if you are using an older project with a different version, it will also detect that. And in that case, you might need to delete it and let Expo CLI suggest you to install a brand new Expo Go. So it's installing the Expo SDK. We should see it somewhere here. Come on. The installation. Is it so? Takes a bit of time. I felt the same way as Didar. I think they should move focus back to mobile. That's interesting to hear. Okay. Haven't thought about that. But yeah, there is this movement of universal applications that are running across mobile and web. And think about like applications like Twitter or TikTok that are mobile first application, but at the same time, they need a web presence. They need the web application to support the being able to easier find their businesses, being able to share content with users that don't have the application. And this is something new. Probably is not like hugely popular everywhere, but it's not hugely popular like these universal applications everywhere, just because it was very hard to build them. Like you needed to support both the mobile applications and the web, and to connect them with universal links. So it was challenging to do, and which means that small companies, small teams didn't afford to implement that. And only huge companies like Twitter, TikTok, and so on were able to have a truly universal application, both on web and mobile. The benefits are there. The benefits are around being able to use the application even if you don't have the application. You just go to the web. Being able to share a link, and if you don't have application, it opens in web. If you have the application, it automatically opens on mobile. These are the universal links. And with Expo Router, everything works by default, like it enables it, it powers it. So in my opinion, I think this is a smart move because it will enable and help smaller teams, indie developers, to build the same experience of universal applications as we see in big and huge applications. There is also benefits around searchability, because if you search something on Google, it's not going to show the content from your application. But if you have a universal application, both on mobile and the web, people searching on Google can find your content on your web application, and they can start, and from there they find out about your brand and they can install your application. So in my opinion, like that's powerful, and that wasn't possible in the past. That's probably where you think like, oh, is it truly necessary? Like, I don't see it being used. It's not used because it was hugely difficult and not possible, not easily available to to us. With Expo, is it possible to create a background application that starts when the mobile started automatically? I think it should be possible. Like if that is possible, like with native application, it should be possible. I just didn't have experience with that, to be honest, like with this. But I'm just starting to think like if there are, like what example of applications are automatically starting on launch on mobile. Maybe on Android is different, but on iOS, I'm not sure if applications are starting automatically. Come on, what's going on here? Expo Go. It's taking a bit of time. My computer is slow or what? I also have some drops in frames. Computer, please. Yeah, of course, I have like everything possible open here, and I'm I wish that it's gonna work faster. Doesn't work this way, Vadim. One second, guys, just clearing up a little bit my computer. But at least we see that the application started loading and downloading the JavaScript bundle. And here we have it. Here we have that template of Expo Router that is initialized with two tabs. We have tab 1 with some content. We have tab 2. On tab 1, we also have an icon that will open a model. So all of this is built with Expo Router, and it's using Expo Router V3 and Expo SDK 50. This is going to be like our playground where we will test and play with some of the things. This template also will support light mode as well. So here it is, but I might switch to dark mode. We'll see. But the first thing that I wanted to experiment with is actually the first thing that was introduced in Expo SDK 50. And here I'm talking about the Expo DevTool plugins. The DevTool plugins, something new that will help us debug our applications. And I'm not sure if it's going to be, if it's going to be easier for us to, maybe we can test the React Navigation plugin. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I was thinking to download if you go into the Expo Dev Plugins repository, this is a GitHub repository, and it has the application example that contains the example of all of these plugins that Expo pre-built to show these functionalities, such as a DevTool plugin for Apollo client, for a sync storage rack query, Tinybase, and so on. But I'm gonna try to actually test the DevTool plugin for React Navigation because that's what we already have. So just to see how it works, how we can open it. Where can we see more documentation of DevTool plugins? Expo Dev plugins here. Do we have a documentation for this? Learn more. Yeah, it should be. Here in Expo, there is a documentation of DevTool plugins that are available from SDK 50. The way to add them is to, first of all, install the DevTool plugins and to use like a hook in our application to basically hook the plugin into our application. Let's find the using a DevTool plugin. After installing the DevTool plugin, okay, but we need to first install. For React Navigation, we have to do npx expo install dev plugin / React Navigation. Let's do that. Let's switch to our application. Let's open a new terminal and let's install the DevTool plugins for React Navigation. Again, yes, we are using Expo Router, but remember, Expo Router is built on top of React Navigation. So anything that is working with React Navigation will work with Expo Router as well. In our dependencies, we're going to see the Expo DevTool plugins React Navigation. And we have to take one more step to basically initialize or hook it in our application. So we need to pass the navigation route to the plugin in your app's entry point when running in development mode. In Expo Router, that would be in our route layout. We need to get the navigation container reference. And then we need to do use React Navigation DevTools and pass it there. Sometimes we simply need to use the hook from the dev plugin. Sometimes we need to send it some information. For example, in our case with React Navigation, we need to give it a reference to our navigation container so it can read like the state tree and the history and so on. Let's go ahead and do that. As we saw, we need to do it in root layout. The root layout is in our app directory _layout. And here we will need to import a couple of things. First of all, we're going to need to import the plugin that we just installed from dev plugins React Navigation, and it's called use React Navigation DevTools. The second thing is we need to import something from Expo Router to get access to the React Navigation container. So that is another hook called use React Navigation state. No, something like container. Yeah, use navigation container ref. Then in the root layout, let me think if it's in this root layout or if it's in this root layout navigation. I think it's in this root layout navigation. Yeah, because the first component at the top is responsible for loading fonts. which we will try to to add them somewhere else. But the second one is after loading the fonts. Here we are rendering the stack. Let's try. So what we're gonna have to do is, first of all, get a reference to navigation. So navigation reference is use navigation container reference. Then we simply use the DevTool plugin hook called use React Navigation DevTools, and we give it the navigation ref here. With this done, we should be able to start and open the DevTool plugins. If I clear my screen, my console where our metro is running, what can we do? We can, let's see, let's go back to the documentation and see how we can open them. Adding, we added. After installing the plugin, you can start the dev server with npx export start, then press Shift M to open the list of available DevTools plugins. So Shift M is the command that we need. So I'm gonna press Shift M here, and we see the menu for the DevTools. We can inspect elements. Let's start with the first one, inspect elements. Yeah, with inspect elements, this is the default. This was here before. Okay. But if we do Shift M and then open React DevTools or open DevTool plugin. Let's open DevTools plugin, the React Navigation. Let's select this one that we just initialized. It's gonna open in a new window. Let me move it to the same screen so that we can see clearly what's going on and what's happening. Here is the browser window for the plugin, and in the logs, the navigation app to see, navigate the app to see actions. So if we go from tab 1 to tab 2, we see that we navigated. If we go back here, we see that we got here. If we open the model, we see that we open the model. From this page, not only can we see what's happening with a specific tool, let me move it like this. We can also send actions to our application. For example, we can reset to the first one, which will go to tab 2, because that was our first action. We can also reset to this one, and it will open back the model. So you can test, like, why do we have a bug like when going from a screen to another? Well, you're gonna look, okay, what's our target? What's our payload? What's the name? What's the parameters? We see that we don't have a lot of any parameters, but in some cases where you send some parameters, it's gonna be very easy here to debug that. The state, route names, index, routes. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff here that will help us definitely. The next tab that we see here is linking. So what do we have? We have tabs and we have the index. Type a path to display parse screen. Oh, that's gonna be so cool, because every time I had to do this, I was using like an npx tool to send a deep link, basically to open a link. But now, let's say we added a new screen called hello.tsx that will simply say hello. We added the screen. We know that it's already in the navigation state because Expo Router automatically maps files to screens, but without a link we cannot go there. With this plugin that we just installed, I can go here and I can say /hello. Is that true? And I can press. No. Linking. Type a path to display parsed screens. No, that's a bit different. That's going to show us which screen is going to be rendered based on the path. So if we don't have anything, that's gonna render the index. I didn't understand it correctly. I thought that from here we can send deep links, but that's a good suggestion that we can have from here. We can send deep links to open different screens. But yeah, this is helpful, like to understand having a path what screen will open. For example, if I say something like this, we see that it's going to render the not found screen. If we don't have anything, it's gonna render the index, the home screen. If we have /hello, it's gonna render the screen hello. If, for example, you have dynamic paths, for example, a folder users, and there we have a screen with a dynamic property name.tsx, and here let's say user name or user profile. In that case, the DevTool plugin is going to help us understand, okay, if I navigate to /user, it's not found, but if I do /vadim, in that case, we are supposed to be still on the not found. Linking /user, oh, it was users, that's why. And if I give vadim, we see that we are going to be redirected to this screen, and the parameter, dynamic parameter, is going to be vadim. Nice, perfect, very helpful. So this, yeah, again, it opens up the door to a lot of library maintainers to build a plugin that helps us debug our applications. Cool, very easy to integrate. Hopefully the API is also going to be easy, and hopefully the library maintainers will integrate cool features and cool DevTool plugins that will help us manage everything. Yeah, before we continue, I see a very interesting comment. Please make the food application course, the React Native plus Supabase, a little bit earlier than February 6th. Please. So for everyone that is not aware of what's coming on February 6th, we worked the last 2 months on a very huge, maybe even more than 2 months, on a huge free course that will help you build a food ordering application. It's basically a 0 to hero course on React Native. It's ready. We have it here in YouTube, and it's actually scheduled for 6th February. It's going to be an 8-hour course focused on React Native Expo Supabase, where you'll build a food ordering application, which is going to also be multi-sided application, where both restaurant owners will be able to manage the orders and users will be able to order. The problem, however, is that we have too many ideas in our content calendar. So everything from today till February is basically filled with content that we have planned. Tomorrow we are doing the paywalls, then we have infinite lists on next Tuesday, the next Friday we have a stock tracking application. What else? And after that we have February 6th, and on February 6th it was the first date where we didn't have a video, so we're gonna deploy it there. But we plan to give access to it to our pro community members and also our course members. So if you're a course member, reach out to me and I'm gonna give you a link to the video. See you there. Anyway, very excited about that one as well. It's so huge. Okay, guys, so let's continue. Let's continue because we have some other stuff to check out. DevTool plugins, we tried it. Pretty cool. The next one would be Let me know in the chat what features from the things that we talked today would you like to see in action. I'm thinking about messing around a bit with the Expo SQLite. Let's do that right now. Let's open the documentation of Expo SQLite next, and let's install and try some of the things in our application. But for that, let me delete some of the screens that we added here, like the hello and so on. Move. And let me do a git add, git commit, -m, setup, Expo Dev Tools plugin for React navigation. Now let's give it a try to Expo SQLite. Let's install it and define a database, run some queries, see the new API. I'm gonna start by installing npx with npx expo. Expo install Expo SQLite. Too many expo. After that is done, import the module from Expo SQLite. Basic. This one is adding a table test. So what I'm gonna do actually is, instead of doing anything here in the application, let's create a new folder, I don't know, services, and there let's create our database.tsx. Here is where we will write all the code that will interact with SQLite so that we can keep it all together. For that, we are going to need to import SQLite from Expo SQLite. Next, we're going to need to open a database, and we need a database name. But opening a database needs to be with a wait. So can we open it sync? Open database sync. That's cool. We can do that as well. So let's open the database when we import this file. As soon as we import this file. The database name, let's do test database. Or maybe let's try to build a to-do list application. Very simple. Not sure how much we will be able to do of that, but to-do database. So that would open the database, and opening a database in SQLite means basically creating a file and connecting with it and being ready for us to send requests, and it will synchronize that with a local database. The next one is the exec async. This is useful for bulk queries when you want to execute all together. Please note that exec async does not escape parameters. Let's, in fact, define here a function that will set up our database. Const setup or init db is going to be an async function where we will initialize the database. Not to initialize it when we outside a function, but to initialize in a function and to have control of when we initialize the function. Because in this case, we can also do it async. Not sure what's the difference, to be honest, of async and not async when opening it. But yeah, we have a database here. Maybe we're gonna store it in a variable called db. So that let's delete here so that we will also have access to the DB from our files. Besides opening the database, I want to make sure that when we open the database, it has at least a table there. So for that, let me copy this command from here, paste it in our function, and let's see the syntax. If you have experience with SQL, maybe this will make sense. If SQL is new for you, it might look confusing, but this is the syntax of SQL to first create a table. So it says create table if it doesn't exist. This is the name of a table. So let's call this table tasks. And these are the fields. The first one is the ID, which is of type integer. It's a primary key that defines the tasks and should not be null. Then it has a value, or let's call it value. Yeah, let's call it value. And the int value, this is an integer. We can say, let's all of a sudden our to-do list application is transforming in a Scrum application. Let's do, instead of int value, story points, or like points of complexity for this task. That's gonna be integer. We can leave it like here, and because the next commands are simply inserting data there. So we don't need to insert anything, but if we do, we're gonna have some predefined values. The only thing is that we need to update some of these statements because we updated the name of a table from test to tasks. So let's replace test to tasks. Here we're specifying what fields we want to input. We are skipping the ID because if we don't provide it, it's going to be automatically auto-generated. Hopefully, we're going to test that out. I don't see anywhere auto-generate, but I suspect that it will. The value is going to be a text, and the second one, we rename it to points. So let's rename from int value to points. Then goes the keyword values and a list of values that represents, like the first one goes into the value, the second one goes into the points. So here, I don't know, fix performance is gonna be, I don't know, 10 story points. Then add authentication, that's gonna be even more, I don't know, 12. And then fix button, change button color. Change button color, that's gonna have like 1 story point. So basically what we have here is a function. When executed, it will open an SQLite database and will, first of all, create a table if it doesn't already exist. If it exists, it will leave it like that, and will also insert some tasks there. And most probably it will insert them multiple times when we run the application. We can check that out in a moment, but let's make sure to call this init database somewhere. Where do we want to initialize the database as soon as possible? And that's happening in the root layout. The root layout is where our application starts. So let's import the init DB from services database. Did we init? Yeah, we need to do export const init DB, and now we're gonna be able to import it. And let's call it. We need to call it in a use effect when the root navigation mounts, only once when the component starts. So in the root layout here, or maybe even in the root here. No, let's do it here. I'm gonna add a use effect, and here I'm gonna simply say init database. A use effect with empty dependency array is going to be executed only when the component mounts. So that means only when the root layout navigation mounts. Now, something happened. I'm not sure what. We can look in the logs if we got any errors. We see unexpected token expected from. No, that was from previous. So now if I reload the application, everything seems to work in a way. Let's go ahead and to see what's going on. Is there SQL in this situation is a perfect example where a DevTool plugin will help us, because something happens behind the scenes, we don't know what's happening, and we have to write code in our application to load it. With a DevTool plugin for SQLite, we would be able to write our database. So if you're a developer, maybe you can give it a try and build a DevTool plugin yourself for SQLite that will show the content of your database. That would be really, really cool. But the next thing is to read. And reading, we see an example here how we can get all rows by selecting something from a table. So let's copy this one. Let's go in our database and let's export const get tasks is going to be an async function. And here let's write this code. Get wall is useful when you want to get all the results as an array of objects. The database is this one, but the problem is that the database can be undefined. So we should check if at the beginning, if database is undefined, don't do anything because it's not yet initialized. Another problem is that the database at the moment has the type any. Instead, it should have the same type as the open database returns. The open database returns SQLite database, this one. So let's try to type our database with the SQLite database. Now it has a proper type. We can call get wall async. Let's select all the columns from test, but it's not test. In our case, it's tasks. So now for row of all rows, console row ID, row value, row int value. I will probably also do return all rows like this. Let's go ahead and where do we want to fetch all the tasks? I'm gonna do that in the tab 1. So let's open tabs, index.tsx from tabs. This is our tab 1. And in this component, let's add a use effect that will be executed when we launch this screen. And here I'm gonna do let's just simply call fetch tasks that we can import fetch tasks from the services that we just created. /database. It's not tasks. How did we call it? Get tasks. So calling the get tasks should call this function and should also console log our changes. All right, we already see a lot of items there, but we see more than we expect, and the last one is always undefined. Why is it undefined? That's because we are accessing row.int value when we should access row.points because we changed the name. If I do that and then reload, come on. Why it's not console logging it? Index, get tasks. Come on, reload. No entiendo. Console log hello. We are on tab 1 screen. Console log render. Oh, now it works. What? That was a bit weird. It looked like it was caching and it was not calling it again. But anyway, we see the text of a task, we see the ID, and we see the story points. The problem is that there are a lot of them just because we every time we initialize the database, we add more items there. What we can do is, no, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna comment this out or even delete it. Or maybe let's put it somewhere here. Maybe later we will need to see how we can add values. But when initializing the database, I don't want to put anything inside there. I just want to initialize it and that's it. Because yeah, adding gives us some issues by adding more items than we need. So we have a lot of items. Let's go ahead and, for example, in tab 1, we get tasks. Let's store them in a state. For example, tasks, set tasks, use state. And here we're going to initialize with empty array. And with get tasks, this is a promise. So we can either do a wait here, but for that we need an async function, or we can simply do .then and send to the .then the set tasks. So when the promise fulfills, when we get results, it's gonna call the set tasks and will give a result there. So now if I'm gonna do the console log tasks here, and if at the same time I'm gonna remove them from the database file, I don't need to console log them here. Let's see if we still see them. We see undefined. We see undefined. Why? Is there a specific way to loop through them? Const console log all rows. Hello. Why it's not writing hello? That's a bit weird. Looks like some caching, to be honest. Console log hello. At this moment, maybe the database is not initialized yet, you know? And to prevent that, we can go in the root layout and have have here a const db a state variable db initialized set db initialized. I think that's the problem, and this is going to be a use state. Initially it's going to be false, and only after this function finishes, I'm going to do it probably with async away because it's going to make a bit more sense. Initialize database is going to be a sync function. So we're going to do first await init db, and then we're going to do set db initialized to true. I'm going to, instead of calling init db here, I'm going to call this function that we define here. And I'm going to do the following. If database is not db initialized, then I can return an activity indicator, meaning that until the database is initialized, don't load the screens. Now it should work better because it will wait for the database to be initialized, and only then it will fetch and query the data, which is a better way. Okay, now we have a tasks here. What we can do is I can probably remove everything from here and simply render a flat list where the data is our tasks. I will do it simply, tasks, and the render item will receive an item and it will render a view. Inside the view, a text. Inside the text, we're gonna write item dot value, and the container, we don't need here align item center, we need them full screen. In the content container style of a flat list, I can add a gap 10 to add some spacing between the items, and I can also add padding 10 to add spacing around the list, like this. The text, besides the text of our task, I also want to add the points, like the story points, and I will style the container a bit by saying that we want them to be in the same row, and I want flex justify content space between, so that the points are at the end. Maybe I'm gonna add a background color, I don't know, gray. This is too much. Again, it's too much. It's dark blue. Oh my god, so bad. Color picker. Let's take a very dark black here. Even more. Okay, and I will add some padding 5, maybe even more. Not sure why I'm spending time on the styles, but I really want for it to look perfect. And how without border radius 5, I don't know. So now we have a list of tasks that we have added there. Nice. So these tasks are written to a local SQLite database, and we can read it right away here. I'm not going to stop here. I really want to add a little bit more things here. For example, in the database, I want to add the possibility to mark one of these tasks as complete. And when I press on one of these items, I want to mark it as complete. To do that, let's define a function export const. Let's just say simply set complete is going to be an async function. When we set task status, in fact, we actually need we need a new field here, you know. We need a new field there that will specify that a Boolean field in our table to specify if a task is complete or not. If we just add it right now, it's not going to change because our statement is create table if it not exists. So probably we need to think about how to migrate the state of our current table to a new to a new thing. How that will work? Not sure. Migrations. Is it too complicated? Are we going? Probably we're going into too much complexity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this thing. I'm gonna say that besides the value and points and so on, it also has is complete or complete. It's of type boolean or bool. Let's see the SQL syntax boolean. SQL boolean. It's is this SQL? Doesn't look like SQL. We can use a bit. But there is this boolean as well. So let's see if it supports, because boolean, as you can see, it's only like in MySQL. In others, there is no. So let's see if in SQLite, there is a boolean field for complete. If I'm gonna refresh now, I don't think we're gonna be able to select that. But maybe, let's see. If we're gonna get errors, we're gonna simply have to remove completely the application, the Expo Go, start it again, and then we're gonna have a new table. Or maybe we can rename the table, like version 1. We're gonna lose all the data there, but at least we're gonna have a new structure. I can add the back these statements with a small variation that they should have a complete field with the value true, and then we have false, and then false. And I will remove these comments. So now we have 6 of them. I'm gonna take them out for a moment, not to do them multiple times. And when selecting them, I think I will be able to take the is complete field. And from our index file, we're gonna be able to add a style to our text. And there is a style text decoration. Line through, and this will simply remove it. And I'm gonna do text decoration if item dot complete, is that how we called it, is gonna be line through, otherwise it's going to be none. And the same with the color of this text. Color, if item complete, it's gonna be gray, otherwise white. So yeah, now we can see clearly which items are complete and which one are not. We get this squiggly line because we didn't specify any types, but that's not a problem. I'm not gonna worry about that at the moment. What I wanted to do is I wanted the possibility to update the status of one task. For that, we need two things. For that, we need the ID of type integer, or integer of type number. And we need the new status of type boolean. Complete boolean. So I'm gonna have to update the item where the ID matches the one that I sent, and I'm gonna change the complete with a new value. What we can do in this situation, we can create a prepared statement. A prepared statement is something new that was added in Expo SQLite here. And with prepared statement, we can first prepare a statement and then execute it by sending simply variables to it. So for example, we can update here. Or we can update it directly. Maybe not, with prepared it's better because we prevent some SQL injection methods. So here is the statement that we can prepare. For example, we want to not insert, but we want to update. So let's look at an update function. Update test set this where value equal to this. Wait, I don't think we actually need a statement, a prepare statement there. I think we can do it like this. We want to update tasks table, right? That's how we call it, tasks. We want to set the field complete to something where ID is equal to something. The first value goes into the first question mark. So the first one is the complete status, and the second one is the second question mark, the ID that we want to use here. So this is going to be this ID. So let's try to call this set tasks status whenever we press on this one of these items. I'm gonna go into the index, and our whole container is a view here, but I can make it a pressable in order to be able to call press events. Make sure to have pressable when you close it, and when we press on one of these items, one press, what should we do? We should call a function called update, or how did we call it? Set task status. So let's call this set task status when we press on the item. And we need the ID. The ID we're going to take from item.id, and the new value is going to be the opposite of current complete status. So if it's true, we're going to try to update to false, and vice versa. So it's going to be the negation of item.complete. So if I press on the first one, nothing happens. If I press on the second one, nothing happens. Let's do here true maybe. Oh, you know what? Something happens, but we are not updating the tasks that we get here. So an easy way would be to create a function fetch tasks, which will do this logic. The fetch task will be called when we mount the component, but it will also be called, let's do it here, like this. It will also be called after we update something, just to refresh everything. It's not the most optimal way of doing it. We also need to make sure that we first await the update, and after that we fetch. As I said, it's not the most optimal, but for now that's going to be more than enough. So let's try to press. Still nothing happens. If I refresh the application, removing it works, but putting it back doesn't. Why? Because set task item yeah, I misspelled this complete. That's where TypeScript actually saves us. If now I press again, as you can see, it works really instantly because everything is local. Our SQL database is local, and yeah, really nice, really cool way of updating. Cool. Try to use try catch block to see any error messages in the catch block. Yeah, that's true. Like, it would be important to do try catch. For example, in the fetch tasks, let me do it as async. And doing async will help us because let's move from .van to an actual async. So const fetched tasks equal to await get tasks, and we want to set the tasks in state. So set tasks as fetched tasks. No, as fetched tasks. Or here we can do result. I don't know, easier. Come on. Now if I refresh, everything should work as expected, but imagine there will be some errors in this get task function when interacting with the database. So in the get task, let's say, what if I'm trying to get the tasks from tasks 1 to 3? In this situation, something will happen, and at the bottom we see a warning, possible unhandled promise rejection, calling prepare async, and so on. Well, that warning is there because we are not handling ourselves the error messages. To handle it, we can add here a try, and we can catch any errors, and we can, for example, either update the UI or using an alert from React Native to say failed to fetch tasks. This alert can be imported from React Native. So now if something happens, fail to fetch tasks, and you can also do here error.message fail to fetch task, calling the prepare async if that's what you want. So this way you give a little bit more information to the user if something bad happens. And this is the recommended way every time you are executing some SQL. If you're interacting with a database, make sure to add try catch blocks as well. So that means that when adding an item, also don't expect the set tasks to complete. Because if, for example, I'm gonna fix the first one by removing here 1 to 3. And for example, if instead of ID here, you're sending 156, and you're pressing on something, probably that will also raise an error. No, it didn't. But if, for example, instead of complete here, you're sending a string, hello, that will most probably trigger an error. No, it didn't. It transformed it automatically. But in some cases it will. So make sure that all the requests are in try catch. You can either do them here or in your services to properly handle it here and return a better error message. Cool, that's nice. Love that. What else should we do? Yeah, this is just the beginning. As I said, there is a lot of other features in Expo SQLite. For example, this, where is it? We can use the get first async if you want to find one row. This is useful when, for example, you're searching something by an ID and you just want the first one, get the first, and it's not going to return an array, but rather a value. Pretty cool. Get each. Okay, this is to return a cursor and iterate over it. In cases where you have a lot of data, this will behave better because it will iteratively get the data from the database and not wait for all the data to be read. Prepare statement. These are statements that allow you to compile your SQL query once and then execute it multiple times with different parameters. So in our case, in the database, this could be a prepare statement that we declare once, and then we call it with different variables. So it's useful when, for example, you have to run it a same query multiple times. Prepare statements. Here are some examples where, for example, we initially prepare the statement and then call this statement with different values like value 1, value 2, and so on. And they go into these fields. The SQLite context, why do we need it for the migrations? Oh, we can add, like, we can get the database from different SQLite context. That's nice. Can have a provider and then simply, yeah, that's really cool. So instead of having like database function, we can have hooks that would use the SQL provider, and we'll get the provider from there. Very, very nice. Transactions. Transactions are the SQL statement that helps us run multiple statements that have to either be successful, all of them, or neither of them. So for example, a very good example would be a bank transaction. When you're moving money from one account to another, you probably might have to execute two SQL statements. One of them is to subtract money from my account, and another one is to add money to your account. If something bad happens between these two queries, in that situation, you might end up subtracting money from my account and not adding it somewhere. Or in a worse situation, adding money to someone, but not subtracting from my account. So that's where a transaction would help. You would start a transaction, you'll say like, hey, either both of these queries are executed successfully, or you revert back and consider them failed altogether. Don't leave something that is not fully executed. So as we can see, Expo SQL supports transactions as well. We can start the transaction, we can execute, we can insert, and all of them will work, either all of them or none of them. So pretty cool. Binary data, we can do that as well to insert blobs in our database. For example, you can store, I don't know, photos there. Third-party integration. We can integrate it with Drizzle or and others. And I think I'm gonna stop here, because this is not intended to be like a deep dive into Expo SQLite, which I really want to do. Maybe we can build a local first application somewhere soon by using only the Expo SQLite. I think it's pretty powerful. We just see here how easy it was to synchronize and to write to this database, and all of this information is stored on a local database, and this application will work with or without internet, and it's super fast. Let me do git commit. Local first, task management, or to do task local first tasks with Expo SQLite /next. I forgot to add. Do you have any questions for these guys? How to optimize a flat list with hundreds of elements saved in the local storage. I'm already using MMKV for fast storage. Do you have any performance issues with that? The database is not initialized. Yeah, thank you, Murad, for mentioning that. How do you set up a scalable project with file-based routing? With file-based routing, scalable project. The way I do that is by creating the source directory, moving the application to the source directory, and then having like the components, services, and others separate to our application. Basically, in app directory, we should only have screens. Anything that is not a screen or a layout should not be here. Or nowadays, let's also say if it's not an API route as well. So basically, if it's not a route, if it's not related to Expo Router, it shouldn't be here. Sometimes I see people putting folders with components here. That's not the place to put it. You need a separate folder for them. And after that, like the rules are the same for different projects. Like it either you are horizontally splitting your application or vertically, or by feature or by the goal. For example, you can have application, component, service, API, utils, and so on. Or you can have application, which is your Expo Router, and then features. And in the features, you have dashboard, users, profile, orders, items, and so on. And in each of that library, you have like components and so on. So you can do that as well. The app is slower to add items when the list is too large. So you have you store all the data in the flat list in mmkv. Do you store it as a key and the value is a huge JSON file? If that's true, yes, it's not going to be optimal, because if you store all the list as a JSON file, as a JSON value, whenever you add something, it's gonna have to rewrite everything. The benefit of using SQLite is that adding something is very, very optimal because it doesn't have to rewrite everything. It's smart enough to add only one item, and also we can do any kind of SQL operations here, like filtering, searching, and so on. So I really encourage you to look into the SQLite for that use case. And Akash is also asking SQLite versus async storage. Async storage, mmkv, they're great for key value pairs, like for things that you don't have like a lot of data for. Let's say the theme that the user chooses, the language, like this kind of key and value fields, the async storage and mmkv, they're great for this. But if you are actually having like a database, you're having tasks, you're having lists, projects, and so on, and you need to do filtering on them, mmkv and async storage will not be good when the data is going to be huge, because with mmkv and async storage, what you have to do is to read all the data in memory and then operate in your application with it, filter it, search for items, and so on. So if you have 1 gigabyte of data in your application, imagine how much time it will take to read all that data first in the memory. With SQLite, you can literally say like read only the first 10 items and also filter by or sort by the performance and filter only the ones that are not completed yet. SQLite will prepare the statement and will read only those items. So it's going to be much more performant when the use case is actually a database. Oh, getting a bit tired. It's basically SQLite. Which one? Basically SQLite. The Expo SQLite? Yeah, Expo SQLite is SQLite that is working in Expo. That's the whole point, yeah. Tell me what else you're interested for me to play with. Because I was really interested in this SQLite, and I'm planning probably to do a tutorial on that. My keyboard disconnected, of course, as always. Watermelon DB is another alternative to the SQLite. I think I gave a try to a Watermelon DB, and in November, to be honest, I was having some issues like setting it up. Not saying it's impossible or it's hard, like maybe it was me in that moment that had issues. But with this SQLite, like the setup was much easier. Synchronize with remote database. Oh, that's gonna be, I need to prepare for that. I would need like a remote database, but that's gonna be like a really great feature, especially for local first applications that work both offline and online, not only offline. So yeah, let me actually note it down. Idea. Local first with Expo SQLite that also synchronizes with remote DB. Let me go back into the announcement and see what I want to check out. I don't really want to look into the Expo camera. I don't think there is anything huge changed. Maybe the API, maybe it's a bit easier. That's what I believe. Expo fingerprint, as I said, for us developers, I don't see how we will benefit from it. For Expo update, that's perfectly fine. Expo Router V3. Oh, I said that I'm gonna show you the API route. Let's quickly build an API route, shall we? That's a great next step. Let me check what do we have here. Git status. Okay, perfect. We are ready. What use case? Or should we do just a hello world? Let's start with hello world, and then we're gonna think about a use case, a better use case for it. So let's go ahead in the Expo Router V3 and actually the API routes documentation from Expo. So what we need is that Expo Router enables you to write server code for all platforms right in your app directory. What we need to do is we need to change the output to server in our app.json in order for the web version of our application to be rendered and to be server-side rendered. For that, let's open app.json. Web output now is static. What means static? Means that when we will try to build for the web, Expo will export our web pages as static pages, as simple HTML, JavaScript files. If we say server, that means that Expo will output the website project ready to be run on the server. This will involve us having to deploy our website application to a server. I'm gonna talk about that probably a bit more later. Server feature require a custom Node.js server. Most hosting providers support Node.js like Netlify, Cloudflare, and Vercel. Locally, we don't need anything extra. So, to declare an API route, all we need to do is to add the plus API suffix to one of our routes. If we go in our app directory, and if we say, let's create a new file, that will be our hello endpoint, and let's do plus API.tsx. Having the plus API tells Expo Router that this is a server, it's an API route and should only run and be included on the server. Let's go ahead and follow our project. An API route is created in the app directory. For example, add the following route handler. It executes when the route hello is meshed. Let's copy this code in our hello API. And from an API route file, we can export multiple functions, one or multiple, with specific names. A get will be executed when we send a get request to the /hello, because hello is the name of the file. If we export a post, the function is going to be executed when we execute a post request, and so on for delete, update, patch, head, and that's it, and options. So what we're doing now, we receive a request with Expo response. We're sending back a JSON file saying hello with a value world. Let's test it out by running npx expo, and this will start the development server, but we have it already running, right? We have it here. So nothing should be done. We actually changed something in app.json to server. So what we have to do is stop our Expo server. Come on, stop it. And then start it again. Our React Native side application is going to work okay, as it was working before. To test our hello application, because it's a GET request, we can simply send a GET request to our local host. Local host, and specifically where our web is waiting. So let's open localhost at port 8081. Here we have it. This is our website application. Because we are navigating to the index, it will try to load the index. And the problem right now is with a database, with a SQL. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the API route that lives on the /hello, because that's the name of our route, that's the name of our file. So if I literally simply say /hello, I should see a JSON file hello with a value world. In your case, probably you should see it like this. I have a plugin, that's why it's a bit more prettified. What we can do is we can console log the request here. And when this happens, let's send another request from our browser. And if I will look here, we see a lot of information about the request. Some of this information will be search params. Let's look at the documentation. We can either send it as we saw from the browser, because it's a GET request, or we can send it from a different terminal using the curl command by sending curl localhost 8081. You can also easily send this send request or request to your API route, to your server, from your client-side screens. For example, in tab 2, if I go in tab 2, let's go into the tabs, tab 2, and here let me add, I don't know, a button from React Native with a title. Fetch from server. And when we press on it, on press, test server or test API route. Let's implement this function in our here, const test API route. We can, the same way as we did the curl request to localhost, we can use the fetch method to send a GET request here to the same localhost. I'm going to remove just this one, like this. Let's also make this an async function and do const await or result equal await. And what I can do is maybe add an alert. Result is going to be result. result dot, we need dot body dot, wait a second, I need the result dot JSON dot hello, or maybe to string. So if I go to tab 2, fetch from server, I think I need the const body, is it equal await response dot body, and then body to string. I don't know, maybe fetch from server, no. I forgot how to parse a response. My brain is already not braining. Console.log. Come on, console.log response. Let me check here. And if I send a request, this is the log, body blob, data. It should be like this, no? Response.body is possibly null. Oh, response.json. So now I can simply say body dot to string. So if I press fetch from server, we see object. Oh, of course. JSON.stringify body. Well, stringify it better. Now we see hello world. And if I simply switch to our API and here say hello world, I don't know, let's say user is Vadim. And if I press fetch from the server, I see the updated user Vadim from here. Another thing is that from the server, we're going to get the request and we can send parameters here. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that here in our client side, in our React Native application, we don't have to specify the local host. We can specify /hello and it will fetch it correctly. So if I do fetch from server, it says possible unhandled rejection because we need just to specify what is the origin. Where should we send this request to? To do that, we will need to add the origin in the app.json, but let me check where. This won't work by default on native as hello does not provide an origin URL. So we need in the plugins, Expo Router, we need to specify the origin. So let's try to see if that will work. In app.json, in the plugins, I'll have to put Expo Router into an array because we need to specify some fields here. And the field is origin. Is going to be origin is going to be local host, or how is it called? This is going to be the origin, the localhost 8081 for the moment. When we deploy our application, the origin is going to be the endpoint or the URL of our API. Probably I'm gonna have to restart it for the app.json to take effect. Yes, await.json. Thank you, Draymond. For some reason, my brain just short circuit. Reload. Go to tab 2, fetch from server. And yes, it works. So now, by simply saying fetch hello, it's much easier to fetch an API route. We will have to, this is working locally because Metro is running and it's also running the server side. In production, we will actually have to deploy our website either to a hosting provider or to a server to a notjust server. That's also possible. Should we try to do that now? Body. Every cloud hosting provider needs a custom adapter to support the Expo server runtime. This is Express. Maybe we can check the Vercel. Yeah, probably. I'm not gonna cover the deployment now. I think we're gonna have another tutorial focused on API routes and maybe on building a universal full stack application together with deploying it. Because I feel that something might go wrong and we're gonna waste a lot of time. And we're already quite far into this tutorial, into this video. Where we deploy the server. Yes, you can check here documentation. Currently in the documentation there are a couple of supported deployments where you can go. You can either go with Express, and in this situation an Express application can be deployed anywhere where you have a notjust server. For example, to an EC2, Heroku, Netlify, or other solutions like a VPS, a virtual private server. For that, follow this documentation, and you simply have to create one file that will redirect in a way our request to the dist folder. You don't have to understand all of this. You just set it up once and then it will work. And then just simply run node server on your VPS, on your server. And yes, it will work similar to how any node API is working. You can do that with hosting providers like Netlify. Again, you just create an entry point like server that will redirect the request to our Expo router. But you need to configure some of the stuff with Netlify. And you can do that with Vercel as well. I'm using Vercel for notjust.dev. And if I would go, I would try this option. Yeah, pretty cool. So these are the API routes. I also wanted to show you the thing that we built during November, because it shows a real example of where you might need API routes. And here in November, we have implemented the ChatGPT wrapper. Let me see if I provided the source code. What? I didn't provide the source code? GitHub. And also in the AI generation. Here is the source code, November, not just GPT. So this is where I can look at a very real example of API routes. So yeah, as I was explaining before, in this project, I was interacting with OpenAI and I didn't want to expose my environment variables into the client-side code. So for that, I created in the source application, I created an API route called completion API and an API route for the images. So in the completion API, what I'm doing is I'm importing an environment variable that does not have an expo public prefix, which means that this environment variable will only be included on the server. I'm creating this OpenAPI client and I'm simply getting the body from the request that we get, and we're sending a request to OpenAI with that body specifying the model, and the result that we're getting back, I'm returning using expo-response.json. From the index.js, where we have our ChatGPT, look, we have here fetch API. We're fetching the endpoint with a method post and with a body.json. So nowhere in my client-side code you're gonna find the OpenAI API key, so that's safely stored there. Yeah, check it out. I can leave it. You're gonna find it under our notjust.dev called Devember Notjust GPT, if you're interested. Anyway, that was the Expo Router API routes. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me see if I wanted to get into other things from. I actually wanted to get into the EAS update to check like this currently running, available, and to check this use updates, and maybe to also check the rollbacks and rollouts, but that would take literally a lot of time. Just not a lot of time, but I'll have to build with EAS. I'll have to wait probably 10 to 15 minutes for the build to complete, and after that to check the rollbacks and rollouts. And just because I haven't tested it before, I'm afraid that something bad will happen, or some issues that will make it incomplete. So I'd rather prepare something for you. So let me add another idea. So many tutorial ideas that we generated today. EAS updates. That would be a really dope tutorial. So that's it. That's all the changes and updates that I wanted to share with you today, and the things that I'm excited about in going forward with Expo SDK 50, Expo Router V3. A lot of things to learn. Make sure to get used to this, because going forward, it's going to take a huge part of building React Native applications, and the vision is for Expo is to become a universal full stack React framework. So yeah, future is bright, a lot of things to learn, a lot of things to get up to speed, that will enable us to build better mobile applications. If you're interested to advance as a React Native developer, make sure to check out our full stack mobile developer course that you can enroll now and learn and become a master of this. Tomorrow we have another live stream. Tomorrow we're going to learn about in-app subscriptions and paywalls. Very important topic when building production applications and when monetizing applications. So if you're interested, check it out tomorrow, or if you're watching this video later, the video is already on the channel. Check it out and learn how to integrate paywalls based on best practices and how to manage in-app subscriptions the way all the big players are doing. Rogelio, thank you very much for being here. Aditya, thank you. Akash, thank you. Draman, Trav, and everyone else. All right, guys. Have a nice evening. I'll see you tomorrow. And yeah, by the way, didn't ask you for that favor. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That will help us a lot. All right. Bye-bye, guys.